Okay, thank you. My name is Sarah Armstrong. I'm the chair of the Storytelling Association of California, and I am thrilled that you are here. We have a wonderful slate of tellers today, telling sacred and inspirational stories, and it's just fabulous that you are here. All of us are here together to share in this telling. Our first storyteller, known as Ms. Fruity, Carolyn Middleton, is a teller of tales and stories who hears light and sees sound. For her, storytelling is a calling, and just like she was called into teaching, she's glad that the art of storytelling also called her name. Ms. Fruity, would you share a story, please?
Once, there was a man who had 2 daughters. One was very vain and frivolous, and she would flatter her father into getting her anything that she wanted.
Okay.
The other,
I don't see. Okay, I
Hold on. Ron, oh no, that's not Ron. Who's talking?
the other was thoughtful and kind and never really asked for anything. Isn't there anything your heart desires? The father would ask the girl, to which she would respond, the eye will see what it is destined to see, my father. Well, years and years went by, and one day, in a fit of rage, exasperated, irritated, he turned to the daughter and said, I will
Hello?
show you what your eye is destined to see. Precisely at that moment, a beggar knocked on the door. The father opened the door. Here, take my daughter. I don't want her, he said. What am I supposed to do with her, said the beggar. I can hardly make a way for myself. Allah Kareem, said the father. God will provide. Pushed his daughter through the door and slammed it shut. Now the beggar stood there for a while, waiting to see what the girl would do. And when nothing happened, he proceeded on his way, and she fell in with him silently, not protesting. Well, after a while, he knew she was tired and he offered her his donkey, but she said no. And they continued to knock from door to door, begging their way along. To the beggar's astonishment, everywhere they went and every door they knocked on, they were met with kindness and open-handedness. They received food, clothing, and even money. So it's no wonder that the beggar began to attribute his new turn of luck to the girl. And a fondness, a gentle fondness, began to possess him. At noontime, they rested, and he laid out the foods that they had for her to eat while he rested. She said, no, we'll share this equally and we'll eat together, just like we begged together. Well, he was really stricken by this generous token of friendship. After they ate, they continued on and they begged their way until late in the afternoon when they came upon this hill that looked over a very prosperous looking town. The hill wasn't steep, but the beggar could tell that the girl was tired. And so he placed her on the donkey, took her to the top of the hill, laid out the blanket, told her to rest, staking the donkey, grabbed his sack and said, I will be back before nightfall. I'm going to check on the prospects. The girl, glad to be out of sight and able to rest, laid down. And she was lulled quickly to sleep by the evening breeze. Suddenly, about sunset, she heard the donkey braying loudly and noticed that he had broken away from his stake and was wandering around the hilltop. She ran after him, grabbed his stake, brought him back, and she tried to replace it. She grabbed a stone and pounded it into the dirt, but she must have hit a soft spot because her hand went in deep, deep, deep into a hole. And it reached and touched something hard. She pulled it out. And oh, it was a beautiful earthen jar. She opened it and poured out a cascade of jewels and coins and even paper money. Oh my, was she excited? She could hardly believe it. This couldn't be, could it? She sat, ran her hands through it for a minute, and then she covered it over quickly, sat back, and waited for the beggar to return. And he returned as promised. And he was very excited. Oh, he was cheerful. And he told her all about his exploits in the town. All in all, I think they're a good lot. And I think you'll see that when we go into town tomorrow. And if you like it, we might even stay and make a living in begging. She listened quietly. And then when he was finished, she said, my friend, what would you do if suddenly you came in the possession of over 10,000 reals, dollars, money? Well, I would feed one beggar every day for a year. So she said, presumably then, if you had twice as much, you'd feed two beggars. Well, of course. Well, she said, what if you had 10,000, 100,000, 1,000,000 times as many? What would you do? The beggar thought and said, I would build the most prominent and biggest, best house for beggars so that they would be able to come and eat and wash and rest for free. It would be the best in the land. The girl smiled and said, and before God, you would vow to do this? The beggar looked and said, I vow this before God. But where will I ever see such riches? To which the girl replied, the eye will see what it is destined to see. And she threw back the blanket, and the beggar was astonished. And then he became somber. Well, now you are a rich woman and you can build your own home. Psst, We'll build a home together, she said. Just like we will share all these riches together, and just like we beg together on the road. The beggar argued, "What you could have any man in the land. Why would you throw your destiny in with me? I am just a beggar." And the girl countered by saying, "Before God, we are all beggars. What was I when my father threw me out of the house? Since it is God who lifts the low and lowers the mighty, who are we to argue and refuse to accept these riches?" Well, they went back and forth well into the night until she finally convinced him that this might be a way that they may never have to beg again. And they finally went to sleep and slept well that night. And the next morning they woke up and headed straight into town looking for the mayor so that they could buy the hilltop. The mayor, accustomed to the usual haggling and bargaining, was very surprised when the beggar just gave him what he wanted and headed out of town, the rightful owner of the hilltop. And as they say, money is the prompt executor of plans and projects. It wasn't long before the best beggar's home in all the land was built. And it had a reputation that went far and wide. And time came, time went, and the beggar married the girl, and they were blessed with many children. Oh, and as for the father and the other daughter, she didn't marry well. She married rich, but her husband was always threatening to get a divorce and get another woman. She was not happy. And ever since the father threw the girl out, his health went down, his business declined, his friends turned their backs on him, and he couldn't get credit anywhere. He was facing ruin. And he went to his daughter and asked her for help. And she was only able to offer him a room in the basement and a seat at the kitchen table of the cooking staff. Oh, he accepted, only for a while. And he said, "You know, begging for begging, I might as well be a beggar." And so one day he left, hit the road. Now, he didn't know where he was going, and he was old and ailing, but he fell in with a group of guys who were headed, they were headed toward the beggar's home. From the hilltop, our friend, the old beggar, he could see him coming. And he welcomed him, unrecognizable to the father. He welcomed him along with all the rest of the beggars, made him comfortable, gave him some food, and then went and told his wife immediately that her father was reduced to beggary. She proceeded to plan a festival to celebrate and welcome her father, and invited him to dinner that night. He came to the room, and in her presence, he didn't recognize her because, after all, now she was a full-grown woman. He looked around and said, "Oh, never in my life did I ever think I would ever again see such joy and riches and abundance." And the girl stepped to him and said, "The eye will see what it is destined to see, my father." Oh, he hid his face in shame and humiliation and was ready to take to the road. When the girl said, "Don't go, isn't there anything that you desire to see?" And the father said, "The eye will see what it is destined to see, my daughter." And so it is.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Amazing. And what the eye is destined to see. We'll
The
be
eye
thinking
will
about,
see what it is destined to see, and so
Well,
it is.
we'll be thinking about that for a long time. Thank you.
Yes. I hope it inspires you to good things.
Thank you, Miss Fruity. Thank you so much. Our next storyteller is Vicki Ness. She's a Bay Area storyteller who teaches an improvisational approach to story creation. She has told stories in festivals across the country and internationally, and she's a representative of the Do Tell Story Swap. Vicki, please tell us a story.
Thank you, Sarah. The dawn awoke and shattered the darkness of a particularly rainy night, sending out light streaming here and there, illuminating the drops that were hanging from leaves and branches and spider webs, turning the whole world into a shimmering chandelier of crystal light. And there in the middle of this miraculous beauty was Edith. Early in the morning, she got up so she could witness this beauty, and she gathered it all in her heart and held it till she felt like singing. Well, Edith was the town nutcase. Now, that every town has one, you know, and this particular town was rather pleased that they didn't have an adolescent with an assault weapon. Instead, they had an elderly woman with a kind heart, a sympathetic eye, and speech that supported everyone. A little ethereal, a little light, but gentle and kind. She was very busy every day. You know, she went on her dates, as she called them. Now, her dates weren't with lovers the way you think of dates. They were dates with the earth and the sky and the rain and the sun. So, for example, on one summer morning, she might just find herself in the skeletal remains of an old barn. The roof caved in, huge blocks of sun beaming down alive with dust motes, and that's where Edith would stand, warmed by the light, smelling the old hay and listening to a kerfluffle of birds in the dark rafters, roosting and re-roosting, the mystery and the peace of it all. She held it all in her heart, and it made her so happy. But after lunch, for example, she might just head out to the lily pond. Now, the lily pond was in the park, but nobody went to the lily pond because, you see, the path there was windy and it was all a little overgrown, and who cares about a lily pond? So the trees were free to grow and grow over it until they formed a dark bower that made the water black, and the lily pads looked like green paint splattered on the surface. But she was there for a reason, because just early afternoon, the sun would hit a thinning part of the leaves, shine through green light, and the whole bower would emerge to be a verdant cathedral of life. And sometimes her favorite friend would be there, right across the pond, a streak of white and black, a heron, immobile, watching her. Oh, it was magnificent. The joy of it all just filled her heart, and she was so happy. Well, Edith figured that these miracles were all really just the earth asking questions. Are you really here? Did you smell the change of seasons? Did you see that bird? Did you hear that sound of rushing water? Are you here? Are you here? And Edith, of course, always answered yes. But most other people didn't. And she thought when somebody asks you a question, to not answer it is just flat out rude. But she was getting too old, too frail to keep up with all the miracles that asked to be answered. So she enlisted the help of the townspeople. So, for example, as the sun was setting one beautiful evening, she stood under the window of the Maxwell's kitchen with a handful of pebbles that she threw up on the kitchen window. Mrs. Maxwell was in the kitchen. She's very busy, very, very busy. Thank you. The rice was boiling over. There were big lava fields of sticky ooze from the rice, and the kids wouldn't get off their phones and get to the table. And where was her husband? And dinner, because she had to clean up, because she had to do some phone calling, and she was very busy. And what is that noise at the window? So she opened the curtains and was absorbed by burnished copper sunset, a magnificent sky with trails of pale blue clouds that turned the inside of her kitchen a salmon pink, like the inside of a shell. It was magical. But she had stuff to do, so she got back to it and closed the curtains. Well, another day, for example, Edith found Mr. Schultz. Mr. Schultz was the grumpiest man in town. And every time he went out to get the mail, you see, he would grumble, bunch of crap. That's all that's in the mailbox anymore, a bunch of crap. Garbage I have to throw out, and crap I have to do something with. Nothing but crap. And out he'd stump down the driveway to his mailbox. Well, this particular day, when he opened up the mailbox, out came an avalanche of fresh red rose petals. And the scent of roses hit him smack in the nose. And suddenly, it was 20 years earlier, and he was in his wife's rose garden. Oh, they were so happy then. Summer smelled like roses, and then that dissipated. And he was in present day summer, and he smelled cut grass, his neighbor mowing the lawn, and the screech of kids happily chasing a ball down the road. He was granted another summer, and maybe another summer after that. Summer was here. But he had to get the rose petals out. That could be illegal, you know. And then he got his crap in his mail. Garbage. Slammed the mailbox shut and stomped back to his house. Well, this went on. Edith was tireless until the townspeople started catching their own miracles all by themselves. So, for example, this sullen teenager would stamp down out of the school bus and suddenly smell apple pressing in the orchards outside of town. And the smell of that would open her eyes to autumn, a cascade of leaves, just like the Hallelujah chorus, bright yellows, deep burgundies, sharp reds. It was autumn, how magnificent. Well, she took herself a leaf and walked home just like a child with a banner. Or the church lady, who was in front of the church digging up tulip bulbs so she could put them in the freezer so that next spring they would flower. And you know, everybody loves the tulips in front of the church, but does anybody think to dig up the damn tulip bulbs and put them in the freezer? No, I have to do it. And she was grumbling on to herself when she suddenly saw right there the very last ladybug of summer on a leaf. Oh, and she put out her finger and it obligingly climbed on, and there it was, scarlet with perfect black polka dots. And then it raised its wings like a mechanical toy and buzzed off. Fly away home, she said out loud. But the feel of the wet dirt and the smell of it reminded her of spring coming soon spring, and how beautiful the tulips would be. And she more carefully put the tulips in their bags. Well, days went on, and the townspeople gathered more and more of their own private miracles. But of course, as time went on, Edith grew more frail and she passed on. And so the townspeople gathered around her grave, a very slight service. They looked around. There was no family. There was no friends. Poor old thing. She had nothing. Really, where did she go in life? Nowhere. What did she do? Nothing. And they looked down into the hole in the ground at the plain pine casket that some distant nephew had shelled out money for, but they noticed he wasn't at the funeral. And the priest lowered the ladder of liturgy down into the dark hole so that the poor sinful soul of mankind could leave this depraved earth, and by the power invested in him could arise to heaven. And everybody subconsciously looked up at the sky expecting to see something. But you see, Edith didn't need an introduction to heaven. She had been living there all her life. And so when she died, she simply went home.
Oh, Vicky, that was wonderful. So much with the colors and the sights and the sounds and all the senses
Thank you.
and and the everyday miracles. I'm hoping we're all thinking about the miracles, our own personal miracles that we've experienced or seen today and tomorrow and the next day. So on this longest day of the year, we can share the idea of miracles everywhere and that they're for us to discover because of your story. Thank you so much. That was just lovely. Thank you. Oh, my goodness. Well, we're off to a great start, folks. Our next teller is Ron Chick. A Chain Unbroken Stories is his title. He began telling in 1973 and regularly used the power of story in classroom settings throughout his career. Since retiring, he has joined storytelling groups throughout California, as well as Utah and the National Storytelling Network. Ron is here representing the South Coast Storytellers. Ron, please tell us a story.
Well, I'll start with my favorite phrase that matches that last day. Miracles abound and astound, but are too often taken for granted. This story is true. I am becoming the Reverend Thaddeus Brown from many years ago. Hello there. I'm Thaddeus Brown. Come here to tell you about something that happened some time ago. I was at that time rector of a Presbyterian church. It was Christmas Eve, and I had just placed the angel atop the tree, and a thought hit me so suddenly that I jumped down and almost crushed a puppy. Our dachshund had had puppies some 12 weeks before. Out of season and unexpected, but if you keep a pair of dachshunds, these things happen from time to time. I scooped up the puppy, put it in with its mates, and headed toward the door. My wife said, "Thad, where are you going?" "I think I'll drive out to the Parker place." She looked at me and said, "Do you think you'll be welcome there?" I didn't answer her, but it was a fair question. You see, Laura Parker was one of the girls in my congregation. And last year she came down seriously ill. Doc Martin didn't have anything he could do about it. The war years were good for our town in some ways. Anything we could raise, we could sell for prices unheard of a few years before. But some of our young men had marched off to war, and 2 would never return, and 1 had returned so changed that I wasn't sure where his life would be going forward. I called around the country. It turned out that the doctors at the University of Chicago thought they could help. Of course, this was long before Medicare. But I took the problem to the congregation, and money poured in, not just from my church, which I expected, but from every church all around, even from the Jewish temple some 40 miles away. Laura and her mother Molly were sent off to Chicago. And after a time there, reports became positive. It looked like she might be on the mend. And not that long ago, she came home and was healing at home when things took a turn for the worse. Just recently, she stopped talking most of the time and only ate bites when forced to, and they seemed to be sinking more and more into herself. Doc Martin said it was not her previous medical problem, but it looked to him as if some help didn't come from somewhere else, we would lose her anyway. So as I drove out to the Parkers, I really wasn't sure of my greeting. I knocked on the door. Her father, Bud, came over and said, "What do you want?" "Why, I came out here to wish you a Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas." Molly's voice grew inside. "Now, Bud." I stepped into a nicely appointed little house with Christmas decorations up, but no sign of joy anywhere. I said, "Merry Christmas, Molly. How are you doing?" "About as well as could be under these circumstances, Reverend." "Well, I really didn't come out here to speak to you and Bud. I came out to talk to Laura. Could I go up to see her?" I'm sure Bud would have refused, but Molly just pointed way up the staircase. The door was open, the light was on. So I went up and sat down and said, "Merry Christmas, Laura." She stirred just slightly. "Came out here to wish you a Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas, Reverend," said a tired voice, and she turned her head a little more toward me. "Well, tomorrow's Christmas. Hey, bet you're all ready for things. Was there something you wanted for Christmas?" She didn't answer, but her face changed slightly. Said, "So there was something you wanted for Christmas? Did you write a letter to Santa Claus?" She looked at the way most 11-year-olds look at you if you asked you to write a letter to Santa Claus. She just blinked at me. I said, "Well, maybe you didn't write to Santa Claus, but you had something you wanted for Christmas. I'm sure you told your mom." "No." "Well, did you tell your father?" "No." "Well, Doc Martin's been out here. Did you tell him?" "No." "Did you tell anyone at all?" "I told God." I looked at her and had a thought that this was more than a wish for something for Christmas. This was a wish of whether life itself was worth the pain of going forward. I thought quickly and said, "Well, Laura, I'm a man of God. I talk to him daily. Maybe you can share your wish with me." Slowly, she said, "I wanted a puppy." For one brief moment, I thought I was my own private miracle worker, but she went on. A puppy with curly hair and a little round tail and spots on its cheeks and floppy ears. Didn't sound like any dachshund I'd ever run across. In fact, it sounded like what was needed was a Cocker Spaniel puppy. Well, I spoke on for a few more minutes and then wished her a Merry Christmas and went down to speak to her parents. "A Cocker Spaniel puppy," said Buck. "I'd have sold this place and everything on it to get her one if I had known. But what am I supposed to do? It's Christmas Eve." I said, "Well, I don't know, but isn't there a pet store over in Springer? That's over 40 miles away and open this time of night on Christmas Eve?" Could have admitted it didn't seem probable, but Molly spoke up and said, "But please." He just went across the living room, got his hat and coat, followed me out to my car. All the way over to Springer, he spoke not a word at me, never looked my direction. We found the pet store. I got out and looked inside. I could see some birds and fish tanks, but nothing else. I think if there had been a Cocker Spaniel puppy in there, I might have done something foolish. Turning away, I looked down and realized, oh, there's a sign here. Hours of operation, an emergency call. So I went across the street, dialed the number on payphone. Pet store owner said, "Reverend, I'd love to help you, but puppies of any kind are hard to get here in December, and I haven't had a Cocker Spaniel puppy available in many months. If I'd had a few weeks' notice, I might could have found one somewhere, but there's nothing I can do to help you tonight. It was with a heavy heart that we turned back toward our hometown. As I was driving along, I realized I had still another problem. The gauge on my car was getting closer and closer to E. I told Bud. Now, don't that beat all? Drag me out of my nice warm house on a Christmas Eve after a puppy that weren't never going to be there no how, and now we're going to end up walking home? I don't know if we'll end up walking home. There's a service station off the highway just a little ways ahead, isn't there? Open at this time of night on Christmas Eve? I didn't answer, but I turned off the highway. We had just topped a slight rise and could see it into the distance when the car went. Bud didn't say anything. He just got out and started to push. Fortunately, it wasn't far and was mostly downhill. But of course, it was closed and dark, and there was no phone number on a door and no outside phone to call. As I looked around, I saw something else, though. I saw a rock-lined path leading out through the snow and went and found what I expected to find. The owner of the place. He wasn't happy about getting out this time of night to sell us gas, but seeing the fix we were in, he agreed to come out. I had plenty of coupons. I had just finished filling the tank and was putting the nozzle up and turning back around when I heard a sound from behind me. I looked over, and there, coming across the freshly fallen moonlit snow, was a Cocker Spaniel puppy. I started to shout to Bud when the voice came out. Now, how'd he get out? I turned. It was the shop owner. This is your dog? I said. Yeah, I've been keeping it down here as a surprise for the kids. Christmas in the morning, you know. He scooped up the puppy and looked at me. Puppies sure are hard to get this time of year. Why, this isn't even the kind of dog the children asked for. Somehow I knew what his next words would be. They were looking for a dachshund, but there just isn't one to be found. Well, I explained the situation. He was delighted at the idea of exchanging puppies. I'm normally a very conservative driver. That night, Bud and I broke all land records. We dashed out to my house. I went inside. I scooped up a puppy out of the pen. My wife said, Thaddeus, what are you doing? Oh, just helping God with a miracle, I said. Puppies were exchanged. All the way back out to the Parker place, Bud just sat there, stroking that little dog and staring out the windshield at the now starry night. We pulled up to his place. He opened the door, stepped out, looked at me and said, Can you hear them, Reverend? Hear them, I said. The angels singing our Messiah's birth. Oh, Laura got better. It wasn't easy or free of pain. Life almost never is. But as long as I knew her, and probably to this very day, she always had Cocker Spaniel dogs around her. And a Merry Christmas to all of you. This is an absolutely true story.
Oh, Ron, that was incredible. The theme of miracles continues. What a lovely story. That is just wonderful. So again, we need to be thinking about our own miracles and what's happening right now, or what we could help happen if that situation occurs to us. Thank you so much, Ron. We really appreciate your telling. Our next storyteller is Angela Lloyd. She enjoys pairing poetry and stories with songs. She lives in Victorville, Southern California, and she's a member of the Inland Valley Storytellers. Angela, please tell us a story.
Good evening, everybody. Hi. There was once, long ago, a fellow named Rumi, a poet, a visionary. And from what I understand, the way that he made his stories and shared his poetry was that he would walk and someone close by, a friend perhaps, or maybe someone who would call themselves a clerk, would write down what he said. So my understanding is that these stories that he told and these poems and songs were first spoken and then written down. And this is one of the stories that I've always loved. There was once a merchant who was getting ready to travel to India. And feeling generous that morning, he walked around his home and asked his family and his servants if there was something he could bring to them. And one after the other asked for a piece of silk, a piece of brocade, something yummy to eat. And he made a note. And as he walked back into his study, he noticed the parrot that was living in a beautiful cage in his study. And without really thinking, he just turned and said to his parrot, "Is there something I can bring you from India?" And the parrot immediately spoke and said, "Oh, absolutely. You know, you're going to travel right past where I come from. You may very well see some of my relatives. And I'm wondering if you would take a message for them. Would you share with them, tell them about this golden cage that I live in? Tell them that I miss the sound of their voices, even the sound of them arguing. I am lonesome for that sound. Tell them I am cared for and I am held in this cage. Will you do that? Keep an eye for a meadow with trees full of parrots and their bright voices." And the merchant said, "Of course, I will absolutely do that." And so he set off. And sure enough, he was on his way into the market in India when he came upon this open meadow with this long line of trees. And the sound of the parrots calling to each other was unmistakable. And he stopped his carriage and got out, and he walked into the meadow, and he called out to the parrots. And he called that he had a message. And he told them about his parrot, the one who lived in the golden cage, in a gilded cage, who had want for nothing, who had a beautiful voice, and how she was missing her family and missing her relatives, even the sound of them arguing. When all of a sudden, a parrot fell from a tree and just landed on the ground and did not move. And the merchant approached and looked, and he thought, "Oh my goodness, my message must have brought sorrow to this one. She must have been a relative of mine. It looks like she's dead." And he turned and he walked back to his carriage, and all the rest of his trip, all he could think was about that one parrot who had lost her life. And all he could think was, how can I tell my parrot about his relative? What will I say? He went to the market. He was able to find everything that anyone asked for. He bundled them in packages, and then he made his way home. And he slowly handed everything out, just dreading when he would go back into his room. And then he pushed open that door, and his parrot called and said, Did you see my relatives? Did you give them my message? And the merchant said, I did, but I cannot tell you. I cannot tell you what happened. And the parrot said, What was it? What happened? And he said, Well, I think that my message hurt one of your relatives. Or something happened because when I told it, one fell from the branch, fell from a tree, and just landed dead in the meadow. And as soon as the parrot in the cage heard that, the parrot in the cage fell to the bottom of the cage and did not move. And the merchant thought, oh no, it's happened again. Now this news has taken the life of my parrot. What has happened? And he opened the door of the cage, and he very gingerly picked up his friend, his beloved, his companion. And he went to the window, and he was smoothing those soft, bright feathers with his fingers when all of a sudden the parrot came to life and just was there in the window. And the parrot spoke to the merchant and said, Thank you. Thank you for taking a message to my family. And thank you for bringing their message back to me. They told me that my voice was holding me captive. And your bringing the message back to me has given me my freedom. I wish for you, before I go, that you will have the freedom that you have just given me.
Oh, Angela, well done, masterful, masterfully done. And what a wonderful message to offer freedom back for the freedom that was given. Just lovely. Thank you so much.
You're
That was
welcome.
delicious. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, what a night, you guys. This is awesome. Thank you so much. Our next storyteller is Laura Cook, who has several names. Oh, I'm sorry. I blew it. Our next storyteller is Aunt Leanne. I beg your pardon. There she is. Gorgeous.
I have several names too, but none of them are Laura.
That's, well, okay. Yes. I'm sorry. Aunt Leanne, thank you so much. Aunt Leanne is a professional storyteller and teaching artist. She believes that story is a powerful force for good in this sometimes dark world, and sometimes even helps us understand the dark. She's representing Storytellers of San Diego. Aunt Leanne, please tell us a story.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Haven't the story's been beautiful.
Yes.
And this, yeah. And this is the darkest, longest night of the year with the very shortest day. I'm reminded that all over the world, as we've already seen, there's stories that help us through that dark night. And I'm so honored to be part of that tonight with this story. It deals perhaps with how we feel about the dark. Is the dark something to be afraid of? Is the dark something nurturing? Is the dark something all of us can learn to get through? There once was a king who grew ill all of a sudden for no reason that anyone could see. And he got sicker and sicker, and soon all agreed that he was dying and that extraordinary measures had to be taken. Well, this king had 3 children, And so the people of the kingdom, they brought the children together. They said, you must do something for your father. You must go to the python healer. Now you see, there was a long distance from the city, there was, everyone knew, a snake, a python who had extraordinary healing powers. There was just one problem. Anyone who had ever gone seeking help from the python healer had never returned. The children, they got together, the oldest boy, the middle child, the youngest girl, and they said, we will go. And they started off on their trek, and they traveled all day and all night and all day and all night and all day and all night again. And they got there just in the darkest part of the night. And each of them held up their lanterns. And the oldest boy said, I will go. And he stood up at the cave where they knew the snake lived. And he called out, Python, my father is sick. You must come and heal him. And all they heard in return was a humming. And the boy, he drew his sword and he said, I will go in and get the python. And he entered the cave with his sword drawn. And the other two children heard terrible sounds. But their brother did not return. Well, then the two of them looked at each other, and the sun came up. And the middle child, after some time, said, I will try, but I will wait and see if our brother comes back. And they waited for the rest of the day, but no brother. And so the middle child stood with their lantern at the mouth of the cave and cried out, Python, our father is sick. You must come and heal him. But all the children heard was a humming. And the middle child dropped the lantern and ran. And so the little girl was left by herself. And she did not know what to do, but well, her father was so very sick. And so she went up to the mouth of the cave. And in her very loudest voice, she called, Python, please, will you come and heal my father? And she heard the humming. And with the hissing, the python poked its head outside of the cave. And her head was enormous, the size of the girl's shoulders. And she repeated, please, won't you come and heal my father? And the python said, what is to stop me from eating you whole like my prey? And she opened those large jaws, and the girl was very, very frightened, but she said, nothing is to stop you, but please come and heal my father first. And the snake closed its mouth and slithered her long body until she was right at the girl's feet. And she coiled and coiled all the way up around the child's chest and trunk. And then, with her huge head above her shoulders, she said, what is to stop me from squeezing you tight. And the little girl took a deep breath and she said, nothing is to stop you. But please come and heal my father first. He is so very sick. And the snake uncurled, singing, loosen, loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. And with that, she coiled around the girl's arms and she said, walk to your father. And if you can carry me, I will heal him. Well, the snake was very heavy and the girl was not very big, and it was a very long way. But she began to walk back. And whenever the snake began to feel too heavy on her shoulders, she would hear the python's voice singing again. Loosen, loosen, baby. And she would gain the strength to walk on all day and all night and all day and all night and all day again. And when she got to the edge of the city, the people all rushed out, and then they saw the python on her shoulders and they gave her a very wide berth. And she walked with the python singing all the way to her father's bedchambers. And the snake slithered off of her shoulders and she collapsed in a heap, but her heart was full of hope as she watched the snake go over to her father. And from deep within the snake, she spit a bag. And she said to the girl, take these herbs and put them on your father's chest. And she did. And the snake coiled on the king's chest. And almost immediately, the color began to come back into his face. And the snake sang again, holy breath and holy name, will you ease this pain? And the king's eyes flew open and the snake slithered off of his body. And he sat up and he saw his daughter and he called her to him and embraced her. And the snake said, you have a child who knows how to ask, who knows how to treat healing with respect. Do not lose this one. And the python slithered off. And they say that after some time, the middle child returned. And after even longer than that, the oldest boy returned much chastened. But all in the kingdom knew that it was the little girl who knew how to ask that had helped her father come back to health. For you see, when you face the dark, it is only natural to feel fear. It's what you do when you feel that fear that will carry you the rest of your life.
Oh, Aunt Leanne, lovely, lovely, and such a wonderful telling. I've never heard that story before. It's just perfect. It's
Thank
just
you.
perfect. And I was hoping and not disappointed at the young girl's response, but then it was still pretty scary, but it all worked out. Thank you so much. Just lovely.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to introduce Laura Cook, who has several names. She's also known as I'ma Be Me as I Be We, as well as Mama Laura. And she's worked in education and curriculum building for the past decade and a half. She's now stretching her heart and her hand, embarking on this exciting aspect of expression and sharing. New to storytelling, Laura is thus far finding it a gift. And now she shares with us. Please tell us a story, Mama Laura.
Mm, 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 Sister, you've been on my mind. Sister, we're two of a kind. So, sister, I'm keeping my eye on you. Let's speed it up a little bit. I bet you think I don't know nothing but singing the blues. Oh, sister, have I got news for you? I'm something. I hope you think that you're something too. Oh, Scrufflin', I've been up that lonesome road and I've seen a lot of suns going down. Oh, but trust me, no low life's gonna run me around. So let me tell you something, sister, remember your name, no twister, gonna steal your stuff away, my sister. We sure ain't got a whole lot of time. So shake your shimmy, sister. 'Cause sugar, I sure is feeling fine. If you have ever heard of the Yoruba people from West Africa, you may have also heard of Oya. Oya? Oh. Oya? Oya. Oya. She has been, and is yet becoming. Like Earth's winds, she is nothing to play with. Summoning change, transitionings laid out before us through forests and plains. And she topples things. But that brings life again. Yes, some have been found lost amidst rooftops and tree trunks tossed. But new life often costs old lives rough with rot. I once was, but she, Oya, she lifted bins and laid them down. She opened up new ground, fresh scented, risen from old deaths, witnessed and unseen. She is uprooting. She is the change we dare to dream fearfully, a force, fierce. Her color of wine, her number of 9, her course, rears, shakings, and strikings, and the laying lows of. So come celebrate if you dare honor Oya. Oh, Oya. Oh, Oya. Excuse me. Oya. Oya. I give thanks for the things you reveal. As a result, I reseal fear far from me. For you are revered, and I think of you every single time I sip anew. And I am humbled to my already aching knees. Finally, mine eyes see beyond what so many of us deem mere tragedy. Oya. Oya! Hegwa! Oya! My yesterdays sing high praise. For without your machete sword, today, sweet, sweet today, might never have shown her face. Oh yeah, you are, always have been, and are yet becoming. Give thanks. Amen. Amen. Ashe. Ooh, ooh, mm.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, thank you so much. That was amazing. Amazing. The idea of change, and change is necessary. Change isn't always fun, but new ideas and new things come from change and come from all of what you've said. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Whew, my goodness, what a night. Well, we have one more storyteller for us this evening. Kiran Rana is a Sufi teacher and often draws on this heritage for his stories. Tonight, his story will be about one of the most famous Sufis of all time, the great mystic and poet, Jalaluddin Rumi. He's representing the Contra Costa Tail Spinners. Kiran, please tell us a story.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you all the wonderful, wonderful story spinners and storytellers and ceremony doers before me. This has been absolutely magnificent. So this is the story of the meeting and heart engagement between the great Sufi master and poet Jalaluddin Rumi and the wandering dervish Shams Tabriz. Rumi, named Jalaluddin at birth, was born in northern Afghanistan in the early 1200s. His father, Bahauddin, was a respected theologian and Sufi teacher. When Rumi was 15, and by the way, that's almost exactly 800 years ago, his family moved to central Turkey, to a town now called Konya. The wise father and brilliant son attracted many students and companions, and a community built up around them. Well, one day, Bahauddin died, as humans do. And the young magnetic Jalaluddin naturally stepped into his place and soon became a local celebrity, a splendid teacher, a master of religious ceremonies and sometimes of mysteries. People especially younger people, followed him and hung on his words, hoping for wisdom and grace. Meanwhile, elsewhere, in another part of that time world, in a town called Tabriz, a restless, austere, holy man, who on the inside was a master mystic, was looking for a true companion. One day, a voice called out to him, "If we give you this companion, what will you sacrifice?" Without a moment's hesitation, the mystic shouted, "I head." Soon Shams Tabriz, Shams means the sun, Helios, that which is so bright we can hardly look at it, allowed his wandering to bring him to Konya. One afternoon, as Rumi returned home from his teachings and prayers, carrying impressive books, circled by adoring students, a wild-eyed older man wearing rags, a sneer on his face, stepped into his way. "You," he said to Rumi, "why all these books?" Maintaining his composure, careful not to offend, the young master said, "I respect them like I respect you, my friend. They are the fruits of deep learning." "Let me see," said the man. Snatching the books, he threw them into a nearby fountain. Rumi almost screamed with shock. "Oh, you are unsettled," said the older man. "I? Those were precious. They are my teachers and friends," said Rumi. "Oh," said Shams. "Well, since you are so disturbed, here." And he jumped into the fountain and pulled out the books, which were dry, like him, and undamaged. "Happy?" he said. At that moment, a profound shaking happening in Rumi, in his body, in his heart, in his soul. All he had read in all his books stood up in him as though alive, luminous with meaning. The stranger before him became this figure of unbearable beauty, kindness, and light. And Rumi fell down unconscious. When he came back, he was at home, and the stranger was there too. Thus began the companionship of Jalaluddin Rumi and Shams, the son of Tabriz. Strangely, Jalaluddin felt an attraction to the stranger, which showed up in him as emptiness and hunger, a hunger that could only be satisfied by meeting Shams deeply, opening to his staggering depth of spirit, drinking from his being and essence. And Shams did not hold back either. He had found the one through whom he too could reach the heavens. His hunger looked different, but it was no less intense. At first, they were almost teacher and student, Shams opening new eyes within the younger Rumi as they stayed in conversation or meditation for hours. No food, no sleep, no time for others. People in the home began to worry and knock on the door and ask after Rumi's health and well-being. They were all turned away with politeness or indifference or silence. But Rumi's students were shocked and irritated, and then angry. How could this rough-spoken vagrant take all their beloved teacher's time? They had offered loyalty to Rumi. They had come from far to live near him. They adored his refinement, his elegance. And now he wouldn't look at anyone except this intruder who was neither polite nor kind to anyone. Who was this invader, this monster? Indignation became jealousy, and then intrigue, and then threat. But Shams and Rumi didn't care. They were wrapped in a beautiful, silent interbeing that would continue unbroken for days, even weeks. As Rumi later wrote, when blessedness and joy, when the beloved appears, sit and keep gazing on the miracles of the one. But the unrest in the community became unbearable. Townspeople gossiped, the morale of the community deteriorated. People said, we knew he was too young, superficial. Sobriety is the mark of the true Sufi. This is intoxication. He is worshiping another human. Rumi's family were most hurt of all. And his sons now debated how to get rid of Shams. One day, following threats on his life and much abuse and offensive behavior, Shams of Tabriz vanished. Bereft, stricken, Rumi wandered in a daze, asking the one, what have I done wrong? He sent messengers to other teachers. He sent his sons to distant cities where he heard that Shams had been seen. Finally, after months, someone found Shams in Damascus and pleaded with him to return. Soon, the beloved friends were united again. Now the relationship was different, little more equal. The grieving and half-crazy searching of the first separation had given Rumi an experience of the emptiness that he could share with Shams. Now the friends would sit side by side in silence for hours, in deep communion. The days and nights of isolation from the entire world beyond, where the students, family, a world at war, a world at peace, that isolation from teaching and guidance, earning and learning, that continued. And soon, very soon, the rage that it created reappeared stronger than ever. And now there was real hatred. Plots were being hatched. One day, someone called Shams to a back door of the house, asking him to step outside for a moment. He stepped out for a moment and was not seen again. Jalaluddin fell into despair. Days and weeks passed, no news of his friend. Gradually, an understanding took hold. No one had seen him leave. No one knew where he was. He was truly gone. Perhaps captured and imprisoned, perhaps possible in exile somewhere, most likely killed. That silent emptiness that Shams had shown Rumi which is also the pain that splits open the heart, now struck deeper than ever. In an agony of loss, Rumi turned to ask the stars and the skies, where is he? He turned to ask the stones and the trees, where is he? He turned to mountains and clouds, asking, where is he? Where is he? Hour after hour he turned, till his turning became one with the turning of the earth on its axis, became one with the turning of the moon around the earth and the turning of the earth around the sun. Lost in sorrow, pain etched on his face, Rumi turned and turned. And one day, the turning spoke to him. It was not the voice of Shams, but it reached him. It said, here. He is here and there. He is all around you. Wherever you turn, you see that bird? That is him. See that girl carrying food to her mother? That is him. You see those minarets on the horizon? That is him. And the horizon is him too. The voice didn't need to say anymore. With new eyes, as he turned, Rumi saw his friend everywhere. He saw Shams all around and in everything. He understood that his earthly friend had indeed given his head, but now lived in everything that there was, seen and unseen. And this understanding breathed into him a fierce and unstoppable joy. Poetry began to pour out of him, to flow out of him. And for years and years, in thousands of verses, it did not, would not stop. Why should I seek? He wrote. I am the same as he. His essence speaks through me. I have been looking for myself. Rumi's turning has given form to the beautiful whirling of the Mevlevi Sufis of Turkey. His poetry, which speaks of love and human oneness with the one, enchants millions of people all over the world. He invites people of all faiths and all levels of feeling to come together in peace and in love. Among his last words were, when we are dead, seek not our tomb in the earth. You will find it. Seek not our tomb in the earth. You will find it in the hearts of humans.
Oh, Kieran, thank you for this teaching. Thank you for this story. Wow, thank you so much. I've learned a whole lot. Thank you. Ooh. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what an evening this has been. Andrew, can I ask you to bring all the tellers back, please? So you know the genre series has been going on for a while. It's really been pretty exciting. Ed Lewis's brainchild continues. And if you want to participate as a teller in future genre months, contact your swap leader. At the SAC website, you will see what the topics are for each month. January's is for something completely different, Tall Tales. And if you're interested, you need to talk with your swap leader before January 11th. So you can get through the holidays, think about it, and then think about a story you'd like to share that's a tall tale. So we have just a few minutes left, but I'd love to go quickly around our tellers and see what you have coming up for you. So let's go in the order in which we began. So Carolyn, what's coming up for you? Anything you want to share with us?
No, I'm working on some personal stories, so I'm hoping to have something for I think it's February, the love stories.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm doing a personal story, so I'm working on that one.
So you're bringing personal and folktales. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Vicki Ness, what's up for you?
No, nothing terribly new in performances at the moment, but I'm organizing a new class. So for the new year. So
Wonderful, wonderful. And Mr. Ron, how about you?
Well, I've been quite busy in recent weeks with several different Zoom events, but the last event of the Christmas season for me is the 12th night, which I'm celebrating on the 13th night, and I call it a Feast of Stories.
Oh,
Angela has been invited. Other years, other people have been invited. Hey, storytellers come. I serve hot smoked tri-tips, potatoes au gratin, and cocoa. Everybody brings something else to share. We eat at about 5:30, and we tell stories until everybody's had their turn. And it's a wonderful way to conclude the season. So if any of you are in Southern California, I am a.chain.unbroken@gmail.com, Ron Chick at Chain Unbroken Stories. Hey, you're welcome to come and share with us. Sometimes we get this place so full you can barely move.
and the tri-tip sounds delicious.
Oh yes. Well, you can take the Texas out of the boy. You can't take the boy out of the can't take the Texas out of the boy. You can take the boy out of Texas. You can't take the Texas out of the boy.
Lovely.
It's true hot smoke. Well, Texas.
Lovely. Oh, Angela, besides that wonderful event, what do you have coming up?
I'm 6 Feet Apart Productions is going to produce a Zoom version of the Courthouse Steps, which is a concert that Ed Stivender and I have been doing in Jonesboro, Tennessee at the National Festival. So I've put it in the chat. It's Saturday, January 28th at 2:00 Pacific time, 5:00 Eastern, which is when we would normally do it. And so we've invited some guests that have done it with us, including Barbara Freeman, Sam Payne, Bill Lepp's son, and the Morris Dancers. So we're looking forward to a little carnival feeling.
That sounds great. So if people just search for 6 Feet Apart Productions, they'll be able to sign up for
Yeah,
that.
and we have a really pretty flyer. But it'll be on my Facebook page.
Okay, lovely, lovely. That sounds
Save the
terrific.
date.
Great idea. Great idea. Aunt Leanne, what's coming up for you?
So I was just thinking this is the first time in a while we don't have anything Zoom coming up. But if you happen to be down in the San Diego area, Storytellers of San Diego has it's the first Monday, right, Mindy? Second Monday? First Monday. First Monday. We are just starting at a new venue on the second Monday of every month. I'm not getting any cues here at all. At a place called The Template, a very small venue, and we're excited to be down there. And we have going on our 3rd year at Twisted Horn Mead and Cider Hall, the 3rd Thursday of every month. We have a rollicking good time telling stories at the Mead and Cider Hall, which is converted like a Viking mead hall, and we just love it there. And I'll be telling in January and February.
Wonderful, wonderful. Busy, busy, busy. Miss Laura, Mama Laura, what's up with you?
I'm always writing. To be honest, I'm a little bit more moved by spirit. So right now, this is probably the last of quite a few different things. I just want to say that I'm really excited about coming into the community of storytelling. I'm more of a poet and a songstress, you might be able to tell a little bit. But I have really enjoyed meeting and learning a lot of aspects of storytelling. And so I look forward to see what is up next.
So please remind us where you are, what group you're with.
See, I'm so new. I'm still learning the name. It's either Sacramento or is
Sacramento
it
Storytelling
California?
Guild.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Sacramento Storytellers Guild. Yeah.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
So we might see you at the festival then, their
Yeah,
festival.
very possibly.
Okay. Well, lovely. Thank you for being with us tonight. And Kieran, what's happening with you?
Well, I feel a little ashamed here because I'm a dilettante storyteller. I probably tell about 3 stories in a year. But funnily enough, I've been invited to do a story in person at something called the Monkey House in January. And I love stories. So if there's going to be an opening in the love story circuit, I'll probably jump on it.
Excellent,
And
excellent.
other than that, I finally hope to be able to go back to doing Sufi teaching in groups in person. So I'll be starting that in the new year.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I just can't thank you all enough. It's been such a special evening, and every single story was just beautiful and beautifully done. So thank you all. Thank you so much. Happy solstice to everyone. Happy holidays to everyone. We'll look for you in the new year. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Be safe.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Have a good night. Have a good holiday.
Save the chat.
Angela, just for fun, I want you to see this. I discovered that this is a menorah because the
Ooh.
shamash is right here. And
Right.
Yeah.
Ah,
Nice.
Very
Thank
nice.
you.
Very nice.
Nice.
Karen, thank you for that story. I've loved hearing that story tonight. Thank you so much.
yeah. I had never heard anything quite like it, and it was absolutely wonderful.
Yes, yes,
Right.
yes.
So roomy.
I'm saving the chat.
Good, good.
Wish I knew how.
I can send it to you.
on the bottom
Oh,
right.
thank you. That would be kind of you, Angela.
Send it to me too.
It was really lovely to hear Rumi from two of you too.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yes, yes.
All right. Good night. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Sleep well.
Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas.
Take care, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome, Angela.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure. Just a
Thank you.
pleasure.
It was
I've
nice.
been meaning to say I love your blouse. It's just